Hello everyone and welcome to this video. In this video we'll be looking at what to do when you have lots of data, because a lot of people have asked me about running TFX, or asked me whether TFX can work well if you have lots of data. So the answer is yes, TFX can work well with very big data, because under the hood TFX is running Apache Beam. So TFX is using Apache Beam to orchestrate all this data pipeline and data ingestion and data processing and generating all these statistics. It's working with Apache Beam under the hood. And Apache Beam is a big data processing framework for streaming and then batch processing. So if you have worked with something like Spark before, you'd find it easy to understand how Apache Beam works. So yes, you can work you can use this TFX pipeline for big data. The problem, however, so let me just go back into my Kubernetes cluster and then show you something. The problem, however, is that when you are running, for example, so I don't have any run. Let me just go into my archives. Probably there is something there. When you are running a TFX component, right? So something like example gen, something like this. It's running in just one node of your Kubernetes cluster. So here in my Kubernetes cluster, I have two nodes, and each node has two CPUs. So I have two virtual CPUs. So if I'm running my CSV example gen here, it's running in one of these nodes, and it's just utilizing just two virtual CPUs, right? And you are working on the cloud where you have lots of CPUs available to you, right? So working on just two virtual CPUs is not really the best, right? So what you can do is you can outsource this job. So for example, if you are going to ingest large amounts of data, maybe more than maybe 10, 15 gig of data, 20, 100 gigs of data, or you want to calculate statistics, you can outsource that job to another GCP service, and that GCP service will be looking at is Dataflow. So Dataflow is stream and batch data processing that is serverless. So serverless means you don't have to set up any virtual machines or any virtual CPUs. Dataflow will determine how much CPU and memory you need and then start your job. And it's fully managed. It also can be used for streaming and batch processing. And it has horizontal auto scaling of workers. And what else? Dataflow is also used for scaling or running Apache Beam pipelines. So if you look at the Wikipedia page, it says it's a fully managed service for executing Apache Beam pipelines, and TFX runs Apache Beam pipelines under the hood. So in that sense, we can use Dataflow to execute our computationally expensive tasks, and then after Dataflow finishes, then it goes back to Kubeflow, and then we continue running our pipelines, right? So that's what we are going to do in this video. We are going to outsource. You're going to look at a different data set and then run Dataflow on our data set. Then after that, after this video, we will go back to our old data set and then continue with the rest of the pipeline components. All right, so I have uploaded some data into GCP, into my GCP packet. I call that data big data. So I have uploaded a couple of data. The size of this data is 15 gigabytes. So we have a couple of files, and then the total size is 15 gigabytes. So as you can see, I'll leave a link to the in the description to the folder so that you can download it and upload it in your own bucket. So as you can see, I have copy 2, copy 3. So I just copied So after downloading, I just copied all the files again and then copy paste into my folder before uploading it so that I can get lots of data, right? So we are going to ingest this data in our pipeline. So let's start. So I'll go back to my Kubeflow. So I'm back in my Visual Studio Code, and as you can see, so I have specified some pipeline. So that what we have to do is actually, so when we wrote our code, we specified beam pipeline arguments to none. What we have to do is actually pass some arguments to this beam pipeline arguments. So here I have a list of arguments. So I'm specifying a runner, which is Dataflow runner, the project ID. So this is your project ID. So if you have forgotten how to get your project ID, you can just go here. You have your project ID here, and then you can replace that. And then the temp location is when it's running when beam Dataflow is running, it's going to output some files, so you need a temporary location to store those files. And then I specify a region and then a disk size. So this is my HDD size, and so I'm going to pass these arguments into my beam pipeline arguments. So I'll just pass that into my beam pipeline arguments, and then it gets used in my create pipeline, right? So as simple. So this is very simple. You can just make these changes in your code using the beam pipeline arguments. Just pass that beam pipeline arguments into the create pipeline, right? And so after that, I can just create my pipeline again. So I'm just gonna paste that in here. So as you can see, my pipeline has been created. So I can go back into my Kubeflow pipelines, and then it's this pipeline. So I'm going to create a run of this pipeline. So start. Okay, so our pipeline has started. I'm just going to leave it for a minute or two and then come back. But hopefully there will be no errors. But whilst it's running, I just want you to look at the events. So to look at the logs, right? So yeah. So as you can see, it started, and yeah. So just keep looking at these logs, and then I'll come back when there are some changes I want to show you. So one more thing I think I didn't talk about is regards to Dataflow. So let me go back to Dataflow. So this is the Dataflow page, and so yeah, I'll talk about this. So if you haven't used Dataflow before, the first thing you have to do is enable API. You have that button over there that will show you, that will tell you to enable the API before you can use it, right? So another thing, so as you can see, TFX has outsourced our job to Dataflow. So I think if I go to here, so you can see yeah, so it has given the job to Dataflow, right? You can see some Dataflow stuff over here. Yeah, to access Dataflow monitoring console. So it has outsourced the job to Dataflow. And as you can see, it says auto scaling, raising the number of workers to 1. So that is the job. that it has outsourced to Dataflow. Hopefully yours is running. If you are having any errors, you can leave some comments, and then I would help you solve that error. Because it's just started, you don't have a lot of metrics, so I'm just going to leave this for a minute or two, and then I'll come back. So as you can see, Dataflow has scaled up our resources. So initially we were using just one virtual CPU. Now we are using 3, and so you can see the history from here. So first it was just one CPU, and then after some time it realized that the data was too much, so we needed more workers, and then after that it also scaled up again. So right now it's using 3 virtual CPUs, so you can see the memory it's using also now. Yeah, and yeah, so so now you see it has increased again, 4 virtual CPUs now. So it will keep scaling till it realizes that it can process all the data in a good way and in a faster way. So let it continue running, and when it finishes, it's just going to scale down all these resources. You don't need to close anything. And yeah, just leave a comment in the description. Leave a comment not in the description if you have any problems or errors with your data flow. So just keep it running and keep watching these metrics and to see how data flow is scaling up to run your job.